We've got a handful of controllers in the game of Valorant nowadays, and sometimes it's hard to tell exactly what makes one controller stronger than another. When should you pick Astra versus when should you maybe pick Brimstone? Does it really matter which controller you pick? Sometimes it can be difficult to navigate this space, which is exactly why we wanted to make this video to break down exactly what makes these controllers unique. Astra, Brimstone, Omen, Viper, what do they even do well? What do they do poorly? What's the difference? We're going to be hopping into all of that today, so stick with us, starting out with my first ever main, Omen. But before we get into it, if you feel like you've been struggling in ranked recently, then have we got the treat for you. Over at SkillCapped, we've recently published a brand new Calm Aim course that details how any one of you could develop Radiant level aim in just a few weeks. While most players just aim in whatever way feels most comfortable, it might surprise you to hear that there's actually a proper aiming technique that pros use to not only make themselves more consistent, but to also help them get more kills like this. In our course, we're going to teach you this proper technique and even provide you with an aim training routine that you can use to instantly start improving your aim and climbing today. Now, unlike other routines, this is a simple less than 15-minute exercise that you can do before you play that will do wonders for your aim. Not only that, but our site is literally backed by a rank improvement guarantee, so if you don't climb, you don't pay. Now, if you're really looking to climb this act or you want to just start fragging out in your matches, be sure to check out our new Calm Aim course using that link below. Now, Omen has been basically the main controller in Valorant for a really long time. He's pretty much always been solid ever since he got buffed during the early days of the game, and although his win rate in ranked remains relatively low, that doesn't necessarily mean that Omen's power level is bad. He's just not necessarily the best pick in an uncoordinated team. What sets Omen apart from other controllers is actually a couple of things. For starters, he has refreshing smokes that he can replace pretty much anywhere on the map. He has near global smoking abilities, which is super cool. Compare this to an agent like Brimstone or Clove, for example. They're going to be ranged locked, and if you want to be able to smoke for both sites on defense, probably they're going to need to play towards the middle of the map. Now on offense, this also opens up a lot of lurking opportunities for Omen. He can smoke for his team while doing something completely different across the map on the other side. Now that is super strong. As mentioned, these smokes also refresh, which means that at pretty much every point in the round, you will not be left without a smoke. Now another advantage that Omen smokes used to have is their ability to place one-ways across the map. And since that has been removed though, your one-ways are a bit more limited. You could still do them and they're still good when you can, but they're not necessarily unique to Omen anymore. Now smokes aren't all that Omen has going for him though, not even close. Another thing that Omen has is literally one of the best blinds in the game. Paranoia is just a blanket blind that hits everything in the area that you use it. There's no catch to it. If they are there, they get blinded. They can't turn it, they frequently can't even dodge it, they just get hit. That sort of security isn't always present for every other flash in the game. How many times have you thrown a perfect KO flash or a perfect breach flash only to find out that your opponents weren't blinded at all? That just doesn't happen with Omen blind, which is insane. Literally the best counterplay to this ability is to either trade some form of utility to wait the blind out, or just to not be where he is going to use it. One really powerful use of Omen's blind is to use it at the start of the round to deny your opponents from fighting for neutral space. As the spawn barriers come down, each team oftentimes looks to hug those barriers and push forward to try to take some map control. But Omen blind basically just says, hey, we're taking this, and there's not much that you can do about it. Which again is just really strong. Now Omen's blind is awesome and frequently is the reason that you pick the agent. Finally though, something that Omen brings to the team that no other controller does is movement utility. Being able to use Shrouded Step to cross sightlines, while it sounds a little bit cheesy, actually is really viable in practice. If you watched our duelist video, we talked about how movement duelists were really amazing to just break out of that choke point and get your team onto sight. Omen is an agent who kind of crosses between roles and can be played as a pseudo movement duelist. Although he's slightly slower than the traditional movement duelist, if he has some cover to TP into, he can get out onto sight and make it really difficult for the enemies to hold. This makes Omen pretty exceptional on maps like Ascent, where you have to deal with many tight choke points. You of course can also use these TPs to play one and dones and then reposition towards safety a bit more effectively, which just gives the Omen that extra bit of flair to his playstyle that many players have grown so attached to. Omen is just a really solid controller, and even if his win rate dips from time to time, he's someone that brings things to the table that just no other controller does. Clove on the other hand is one of the newer controllers in the game and has taken the ranked scene by storm. What Clove does really well is they're incredibly forgiving to play, which is very well suited for a ranked playstyle. Clove brings something new to the table that no other controller has: smokes after death. Having a Clove on your team means that in a post plant, despite it being a 1v1, is not really a 1v1. Clove can smoke off the spike or smoke off the enemy and essentially turn a 1v1 into a 1v1.5. On top of this, Clove is just really hard to kill. The ultimate basically means that even if you go for a 1-for-1 with Clove, they might just pop back up and run your team down anyway, making it so they can pretty much just run it down. Basically, trading 1-for-1 with Clove isn't really ever a great trade. Either they come back to life or they just smoke after death. This is Clove's main advantage in the game. As a controller though, they're a bit locked. Their smoke range is pretty restricted and their smoke duration is actually lower than other controllers, which can definitely cause them to suffer a bit. What they lack in this area though, they make up for with refreshing smoke utility, so they can still get many smokes off during the round. Finally, Clove's other abilities, Metal and Pick Me Up, are both decent. The movement speed for Pick Me Up is largely underestimated and gives you a massive advantage in any duels after landing a kill or an assist. A little selfish insert here. One of my least favorite things is when I see a Clove player land a kill onto the second to last person in a round and then not use their heal. It is the last time in the round you will get a chance to use it, and at least use it for the movement speed. There's no reason not to. Now, Metal is also pretty good, and it can be used for fighting for space pretty effectively. Since Clove is slotted as a controller, the piece of utility that people often compare this to is Omen's Blind. It's not quite as good at fighting for space, but it's certainly not bad. Putting Clove's entire kit together, it's probably pretty easy to see that you want to be fighting a lot. You got less to lose than literally every other agent in the game. If you die, you are still capable of doing stuff, and with your ultimate, you can res. You need to be fighting on the front line as this agent. Now, Clove's counterpart is of course going to be Brimstone. Brimstone is similar to Clove in many ways, but the main difference is that he's a little bit better at stalling pushes, while still remaining decently aggressive. Starting out with his smokes, Brimstone gets 3 smokes that do not refresh. This is honestly one of the things that really holds Brimstone back, because in the long, drawn-out rounds, running out of smokes kinda sucks. Oftentimes, controllers like to use 1 smoke at the start of the round to help their team take some sort of map control, which normally means that after the execute, Brimstone is just out of smokes completely. Not to mention, Brimstone is also range locked, just like how Clove is, which can be restricting at times. Now, although Brimstone faces these limitations, it's also a bit of a strength because Brimstone is the only controller in the game who can drop 3 smokes at once, which is pretty awesome actually at times. That brings us to the first time in this video that we've mentioned. Oftentimes, people love to run 2 controllers in their comp. Brimstone makes an awesome secondary controller because he can find somebody else like Viper, and they can complement each other's weaknesses. Traditionally, Viper isn't super strong because she can't always smoke the exact locations that you want, but she's really good at lurking and taking map control, which as mentioned is kind of what Brimstone struggles with. More about Viper later on though. Now, the real strength of Brimstone's kit comes from his Molly and his ultimate. These 2 abilities provide a pretty insane amount of space denial and stall that proves to be incredibly valuable. Brimstone's Molly is the longest lasting Molly in the game, and it hits pretty freaking hard. It can basically stop an entire push in its tracks for a good 10 seconds all by itself, and not only that, but with a lineup or 2, you can clutch out entire post plants by just mollying the spike before the defenders can defuse it. We've all seen this happen, so I don't even have to explain it to you how frustrating this is to deal with. On top of the fact that his ultimate can also stall time off the clock, Brimstone is just nuts as a post plant agent. But that's just more of a cherry on top for these abilities. There are more standard uses that are also just really good. Orbital Strike basically guarantees nobody can be wherever you use it, and oftentimes it can even result in free kills if somebody is mispositioned. Because of how lethal this ultimate is as well, it makes for a really great combo tool with stuff like Breach's ult, Breach's stun, info utility, and many more. Finally, the last thing that makes Brimstone really fun is his Stim Beacon. Stim Beacon gives the entire team movement speed and increased fire rate, which is just really nice for a rush. We mentioned earlier Clove's movement speed was really strong, and now just imagine giving that movement speed to the entire team as you're going in. It's just pretty freaking nice. Brimstone is a really solid controller for any team that is looking to go fast, and is also really well rounded with his ability to stall your opponents on defense. Definitely great like standard controller to learn to play. Now, if Brimstone is a really good standard controller, Astra is a really good advanced controller to learn. She's not always great, but when she's good, she is really good. And right now, Astra is really good. Now, similar to Omen, one of Astra's greatest strengths is her ability to smoke anywhere at any time. She can place 5 stars during the round anywhere on the map and use those stars for whatever she wants, whether it's a smoke or a stun or a gravity well. But one of the really cool things about Astra is that your opponents can see these stars, and it forces them to react to them. They can't shoot them to break them, and oftentimes just seeing a star where you're standing is enough to force you to move. The best part is you can place 3 stars at the start of the round on a site, and then right at the start of the round just pull them back so that you can use them again. And when you pull them back, they turn into this fake smoke for like 1 second. Now, these fake smokes have a lot of practical uses. You can try to bait enemies into pushing them, thinking it's a real smoke. You can use it to block sight lines and give your team the ability to cross safely. You can use it to get your team out of a choke point really fast. Or you could just use it for recovering that extra star for later in the round. It's basically just a free piece of utility, which can oftentimes make Astra feel like she has infinite abilities during the round. On top of this, with 5 stars on an execute, you can drop 2 smokes, stun 1 location, gravity well another, and still have enough utility left for 1 more smoke. That is crazy. It basically makes it so there is no location that anyone could stand on site where it's entirely safe. Now, all this power obviously comes with a trade-off. Astra is kind of clunky to play. You need to go into this Astra form, which leaves you pretty vulnerable, and to most players this is going to feel a bit unintuitive. It takes a lot of practice to get used to, but once you have a bit of playtime on Astra, this process becomes faster and faster. A small tip that you can figure out is that you can actually maintain some small momentum when switching into Astra form on the move by first jumping before shifting. You'll continue your forward movement while entering the Astra form, which will give you, albeit a small but also nice amount of mobility if you need to get a star out while traveling. Now, with all these strengths, there is one thing that we haven't mentioned that makes Astra even stronger. Due to her ability to place stars anywhere on the map, as well as her ability grab well, being able to stall pushes, she essentially could just claim map control for her team at the start of the round, wherever she so chooses. If Astra wants to take A main, she could just place a gravity well at the start of the entrance of A main, and good luck just running through that. This strength is something that maybe Omen has, but most controllers cannot do nearly as effortlessly. For Omen, it costs him using his Paranoia, basically the strongest ability in his kit. For Astra, it just costs 1 star, and she'll get that gravity well back later in the round. This makes Astra a really powerful agent to have on your team for offense, for defense, basically just all around a really strong agent. Finally, Astra's ultimate again is just solid. It's not the best ultimate in the game, but a well-placed Astral Divide can just straight up win the round. If the enemy team is trying to play post plant off-site, you can just wall off the spike, and suddenly they're panicking to try to stop the defuse. And on offense, it can be used basically just to save yourself 2 stars on an execute. It's just a solid ability. Once you get past the kind of clunkiness it takes to play Astra, she is very powerful. Now, another controller that has always remained pretty powerful for actually quite a different reason is Viper. Now, you don't actually see Viper often in matchmaking, and part of that is due to what she really offers to a team. While our traditional controllers that we've talked about are great at dropping smokes for your team during an execute, what Viper really excels at is blocking off large sightlines and making it difficult for the enemy team to gather information. Viper is really strong in double controller setups with someone else like Brimstone that allows her to focus her smokes on a singular area of the map and make it really hard for defenders to hold that area, while Brimstone handles all of the team smokes. Think of a map like Bind where Viper can drop her wall on A short, maybe even throw in a smoke orb for U-Haul, and now it's basically impossible for the defenders to get information on if somebody is walking up short or not. Like, seriously, what the hell is going on behind this wall? There's not really another controller in the game who can do this sort of thing effectively, and the cool thing is Viper can actually throw this wall up and down from anywhere on the map after placing it. So she could place this wall during the pre-round and then just go B with her team. You might immediately think, oh, well, Harbor can wall like this, and while that's true, he doesn't really do it without actually having to be there in person, which holds him back a bit for this purpose. When Harbor walls, the jig is up, you know exactly where he is. Now, Viper's main role in offense is to give your team more options. She makes your offense much less predictable and creates questions for the defenders. On defense though, Viper is also excellent. Her Smoke Orb, Molly, and Ultimate are all a nightmare to push into, and it basically makes Viper feel like a sentinel at times on defense. Not to mention her wall can cover multiple choke points, basically allowing you to smoke all over the map at once. That being said, again, she's not the ideal controller alone on defense because these smokes aren't super versatile. On a retake, oftentimes Brimstone's smoke is going to be a lot better. If you want to smoke the spike, but you've already used your Smoke Orb, you basically are shit out of luck. Finally, Viper's ultimate is just really strong. It can be used on spike for post plant or to cover a significant choke point on defense, and the fact that it can be indefinitely up basically means that once it's established, nobody is coming through there without some form of utility or coordinated team effort. It's a rather scary ability to push into, and it's oftentimes viewed as one of the stronger controller ults in the game. Viper is basically just really good at what she does, taking map control and creating options for her team, but she's not super great at placing on-demand smokes. Because of this though, it makes her a great lurker. Finally though, the last controller that we've got to talk about is Harbor, who we won't dwell on too much because he's confirmed to be getting some changes soon. Harbor's main strength in the game is his ability to help his team scale up with his Cascade, as well as his ability to protect his team while planting or defusing the spike with his Clove. His Clove is kind of his star ability, where basically it's his moment to shine. You throw that thing down in the spike diffuser and you get in the way and try to fight people off and protect your teammate. Now that's a pretty cool gameplay loop for Harbor players, and it's really the rest of his kit that kind of holds him back. As mentioned, he can't really smoke from across the map, and due to how his wall smoke works, it's kind of awkward to get a good smoke wall down unless you're pre-positioned in an ideal spot already. Now, while his wall can cover a ton of space, making him a viable choice on maps with larger sightlines, again, similar to Viper, you don't really want to run him as a solo controller due to his limitations. Instead, you'll normally run him as a complement to another controller, oftentimes actually Viper on larger maps like Icebox. Harbor can do a good job of protecting the spike planner, and him and Viper can alternate walls to cover a large amount of space basically forever. Viper's wall goes up, and then Harbor's wall goes up after, and then Viper's fuel has regen, so her wall goes up after. It's basically just perma wall, which is actually pretty cool. Harbor is also pretty good at scaling up due to his ability Cascade. This is a smoke wall that travels forward in front of your team, allowing you to have some sort of protection as you walk forward. You get 2 of these walls, and they can actually be pretty helpful on a default, almost giving Harbor more of an initiator feel at times. Finally, the last thing that Harbor really has going for him though is that his ultimate can be quite strong. It covers just a massive area and causes a lot of chaos on the battlefield. People have to bob and weave to avoid it, and while it's not as good as other ults in the game, it's still fairly decent when used on an execute or a retake ult. While Harbor isn't super present in the meta today, after his buffs later in this year, we hope to see him become a more competitive controller in the Valorant meta. And if you struggle with climbing, then let me tell you that we can help you out today and get you back on track and ranking up. As mentioned with our brand new Call Me Aim course, we'll teach you everything that you need to know about how aiming has developed over the last 10 years. We'll teach you the established proper technique that aim pros use to maximize their accuracy and with far less. Aiming can feel so hard sometimes, but we'll help make it stupid simple and get you ranking up in no time or your money back. Don't forget, site subscribers also get direct access to our coaches in Discord so that you can get personalized feedback just for you. Nobody understands how to climb out a low elo more than us, so if you're looking to rank up, be sure to check out SkillCapped using that link below.
And other than that, my name's Casey, and I'll catch you in the next one.